Want to stay up to date with everything that's happening on the show? Or do you have a story that you'd like to submit for one of our Listener Stories episodes? You can get in touch with the show via the website at www.hauntedukpodcast.com, on Instagram at hauntedukpodcast, on X at hauntedukpod, or you can email us at contactus@hauntedukpodcast.com. We're also on Facebook and TikTok. And if you want to support the show, you can do it via either Patreon or Ko-fi. Both platforms have exactly the same content, but work in slightly different ways. One of the advantages of Patreon is its sleek user interface, but if you want to avoid those pesky additional charges Apple, Google, and Patreon apply to your subscription, then why not give Ko-fi a try? Simply open a browser window and type ko-fi/Haunted UK Podcast. That's Ko-fi/Haunted UK Podcast, and you'll soon find us. Whichever platform you choose, we're sure you'll enjoy the bonus content. Thanks for listening, and enjoy the episode. This is the Haunted UK Podcast's Short Haunts. Welcome, dear listeners, to our series of short haunts, a shot of scary, just for you. So grab a hot chocolate, maybe a tea, maybe something stronger, because this is Haunted UK Podcast's Short Haunts, the second building. Now, let's turn this over to our listener. Hi, my name is Darren, and I've really enjoyed listening to the show. I'd like to share an experience I had in 2006 in Glasgow, Scotland. A bit of background on myself. I'm a skeptic and feel that there are rational explanations for most people's experiences. However, after a frightening and inexplicable experience of my own, I developed a deeper interest in the paranormal. As a child, I enjoyed watching Strange But True, and my father often teased me that the creaking floors in our old house were the footsteps of the previous owner who had died there, but I never took any such things to heart. I should note that for about a decade now, I have worked as a tour guide in the Edinburgh Vaults and the Greyfriars Kirkyard, both reportedly very haunted locations. I've been in the vaults hundreds of times, and though colleagues have reported experiences that range from cold spots to having small items thrown at them and seeing or hearing things they can't explain, I haven't had any experiences of note, at least nothing that couldn't be relatively easily explained away. But I can't say the same for the job I had in my early 20s. I was working reception and security in 2 Scottish government buildings in Glasgow city centre. The larger of the 2 buildings stood about 5 stories tall and dated back from the late 1970s, while the other, smaller building stood approximately 3 stories tall and had been built in the 1990s. Both buildings were in busy areas of the city with lots of traffic and the hustle and bustle of nightlife, but the smaller building, for some reason, always had a strange atmosphere, remaining quiet even during the day, as though no one dared to have anything more than a hushed conversation within its walls. I worked overnight shifts as a security guard in both buildings. Regular patrols in the larger building were always uneventful and simply consisted of making the rounds in a large empty building. The smaller of the two buildings, however, was a different story entirely. I had a few daytime shifts to get my bearings before beginning the night shifts. From the first overnight shift I worked, I felt uneasy. I can't pinpoint anything specific, just a general heavy loaded feeling, the impression that something was there with me, and a feeling of being watched. I didn't pay too much attention at first, but increasingly over time something just didn't feel right. So I spent most of my time in the security office behind the locked door. The building was well equipped with CCTV, which I could view from the security office. On several occasions, I would see misty white figures pass in front of the screen. I would check the cameras and sometimes would find a cobweb that could be to blame, but oftentimes the smoky white apparitions went unexplained. My colleagues mostly consisted of older men, and I didn't feel comfortable approaching them with my unexplained feelings and sightings. But one day, while out for a drink with a co-worker named David, I worked up the courage to ask if he'd ever had any strange experiences working the night shift. He grinned and said, "Oh, aye," then proceeded to tell me that one night while at work, he phoned his wife from the security office. His wife suddenly got rather upset, asking if he had another woman there with him. He replied that he was alone, but she kept insisting she could hear a woman's voice also on the line. David swore to his wife that he was alone, but she persisted, saying she could now hear the woman laughing. He eventually managed to convince her that he was indeed alone, and the issue was never mentioned again. "Did you have the TV on or the radio?" I asked David, already knowing the source of the noise couldn't have come from outside, since the security office was void of windows. He assured me that he did not, and to this day, he had no idea who the woman was that his wife was hearing through the phone. I sat back, slightly unnerved, taking in the story he'd just told me. He hardly skipped a beat before launching into another. This time, the incident occurred in the break area, which consisted of a small room with a bench, kettle, and a little fridge. One of the guards was in there making a cup of tea one night when he was pinged very hard on the ear. So hard, in fact, that it caused him to drop the cup. When he turned around to see who had played this trick on him, he found he was completely alone. It dawned on him then that the building had been clear of any other people for several hours already. I could feel a mounting sense of dread as David continued to tell me about the strange goings-on in the building. He then launched into the next story, which chilled me to my core. Every few weeks, the building would be visited by contractors who would come in overnight, usually to work on IT systems and the like. These contractors were generally also government employees with their own passes. We were always made aware of when they were coming, and they would always let us know before they left. David was in the foyer one such night while a contractor, an electrician in this case, was working on the third floor of the building. It was about 3 a.m. when out of nowhere David suddenly heard the sound of someone running down the stairs and racing toward the exit. He turned to see the electrician hammering against the glass door, shouting to be let out. Startled and bewildered, David promptly obliged. The electrician flew out of the door, offering no explanation for his dramatic departure. The next day, his boss came to gather the equipment he'd left behind in his haste to exit the building. His boss went on to explain what had happened. The electrician claimed he'd been poked hard in the back while working, and when he turned around to look, he saw a small, ghostly pale girl standing only a few feet away, staring at him with an unwavering gaze.
Jesus!
That's when he bolted out of the room and never looked back. I continued to work overnight shifts without giving too much thought to these stories, and had mostly put them to the back of my mind until one particular night when I had a terrifying experience of my own. I'd already done my patrols, confirming the building was empty and that the doors to the building were secure. I went to the security office and sat at the desk where a small television was perched next to the monitor, where I could watch the CCTV feed in real time. The monitor screen was divided to show footage from all the different cameras. I knew the lights in the hallways were set up to be triggered by motion sensors, so when I noticed a light come on in the hallway on one of the cameras, it immediately caught my eye. I turned off the television to focus on it, and was astonished to see the next light down the hall turn on. Then another. A shiver went down my spine as I realized the lights were turning on in sequence, as though someone was walking down the hallway. But there was no one there. I knew the building was empty and secured, as I'd just done my patrol. I stood staring at the screen, transfixed, watching as the lights kept turning on one after the other. It was at this point that I heard footsteps. My stomach dropped as I realized the lights in the hallway were leading to the security office. My heart began pounding as I turned to look at the double doors, half expecting them to swing open at any moment. The footsteps stopped just outside the security office, and almost immediately, the lights started turning off, leaving the hallway empty, still, and dark once again. I remained frozen in place for quite some time, then sat down to regain my composure. I stayed in the office with the door locked until the sun came up and a colleague arrived to relieve me. Then I went home and never spoke of the incident to anyone. Much later, I learned that the site the smaller building had been built on once housed a bus station in the Anderson area of Glasgow. Apparently, several people, including children, had died in bus-related accidents over the years. Some suggest these tragedies may be responsible for the paranormal events occurring there. I still question myself to this day. Was it just faulty electrics and an overactive imagination? I can't really say. All I know is that I felt something wrong in that building from the very first day. And I saw what I saw. It was real, and to this day the thought of it sends a shiver down my spine. Thank you for telling my story. I really enjoyed the show. I was looking for a podcast about the paranormal and was glad to find one specifically about the UK. And that is the end of our short haunt. Thank you for listening to the second building. Please let us know your thoughts. Was the building plagued by the lost souls of unfortunate victims from the bus station? Or was it simply plagued with a faulty electrical system and workers with overactive imaginations? Perhaps the grueling hours of overnight shifts and spending all those hours alone played tricks on their minds. Or maybe there really was a ghostly little girl meandering down the hallway, on the prowl for lone security guards to scare. Whatever the case, be on guard next time you work a night shift or visit an empty building after hours, because perhaps the next subject of a short haunt could be you.